speaker today is Michael Rumis from the Workers' International League. Michael has been involved in socialist politics since around 1996. He's been heavily involved in the anti-war and immigrant rights, and also working in defense of the Cuban and Venezuelan revolution for much of his adult life. He's currently helping to lead a union organizing drive at a call center that he works at, and he also works with Utah Jobs for Justice and other broad coalitions that help the cause for working people. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you. Well, I was going to just go over, I guess it seems like the people who are here are kind of not Trotskyists, so I'm wondering maybe if I should just go over some really basic ideas here. I kind of was going to do that anyway, but as you probably know, there's a billion Trotskyist sects, so that's more where I was going and trying to maybe like link it with trade unions and things like that. But I guess I'll just start from the beginning, since it's, it doesn't seem like that's like the one maybe tendency here that's not really represented, which is fine. But I guess from the beginning, Trotskyism, the whole idea, at least from our perspective of Trotskyism, is that we feel like the Russian Revolution, once it happened, it was one of the most powerful, important events in human history, but at a certain point it began to degenerate. And actually, I would say probably early on in the revolution, there was the seeds of degeneration because of the backwardness of the country, because there was no world revolution that was happening, I should say the world revolution was happening, but it wasn't successful. And that, in our opinion, that was always the key to the Russian Revolution. Any revolution is always that it's a world movement. It's not just one thing. It can't be isolated in just one country. In our view, that's what Lenin's view was. So we feel like there was, at a certain point, because of this backwardness, because there was an inability to increase the productive level of the country beyond capitalism, or even to a point that was, at a certain point, even under Tsarism, that there was a backward movement toward bureaucratic degeneration, where the bureaucracy essentially became the leading class within the country, representing the working class in a kind of a weird, refracted way, but at the same time, representing its own interests and having various factions that represent different classes within society, but ultimately representing themselves. And because of that, Trotsky, in our view, was representative of the revolutionary section of the working class that was willing to continue on the fight of the revolution, to kind of bring it back to its original theoretical underpinnings, its original orientation, its original its working class beginnings, essentially, when Trotsky was expelled in 1927, he actually initially had formed something called the Left Opposition. And the Left Opposition essentially countered things from other factions within the Russian Revolution that were in favor of either kind of staying where they were at as far as working with whatever capitalist elements existed in the country because they had no choice, or even going further and just like I think Bukharin had a similar slogan to Deng Xiaoping, which was, something like "get rich, go ahead, get rich," something like that. So that, Trotsky, from the very beginning, his current, the Left Opposition, was speaking out against that as a means to try and prevent the dissolution of the country, which, as Lenin had said, was something that it was, I guess, the Schmitzka, or however you pronounce that, the unity between the workers and the peasants. We feel that what happened was, what Stalin actually represented was something very similar to what Napoleon represented for the capitalist class, which was essentially someone who did represent the interests of the capitalist class, but in a refracted way. They actually did, go against many of the capitalists, especially at the time, there were many capitalists who were willing to deal with whatever existed as far as feudalism because they were afraid of revolution. And in the sense that Napoleon kind of balanced, and other Bonapartists balanced between the classes, this is how we feel Stalin, what he represented, what Stalin represented within the Soviet Union was a proletarian Bonapartist, is the phrase, is the term that we use. Kind of a weird mirror reflection of fascism, but on a completely different basis, completely different property basis. And because of that, having completely different ramifications for working people. We obviously don't oppose, Trotsky never opposed the Soviet Union in its property relations. What they opposed at a certain point, Trotsky and the left opposition decided that it was impossible to reform the government of the Soviet Union after lots and lots of getting executed. But actually, it wasn't even that. There was a certain point after Trotsky got expelled from Russia. He, essentially what they wanted to be was to remain as like a loyal opposition to the Communist Party. And it wasn't until the rise of Hitler that, in Trotsky and in my view, the inactivity of the Stalinists that were willing to essentially let Hitler come to power without even a bullet being fired, that Trotsky and the left opposition decided to actually build something new, and that given the new world situation, which is going to be something probably a lot similar to what we're in now, it was going to allow for the emergence of a new international. I don't believe that ever actually happened. The Fourth International kind of was a bit aborted at birth, largely because the connections with the mass organizations that existed at the time was tenuous. Something coming out of what in our opinion was a political counter-revolution in the Soviet Union is not going to be as powerful as something that comes out of a revolution, obviously, like the communist parties did. Because of these reasons, and many others, especially what happened during World War II, the Fourth International that Trotsky set up, it never really went anywhere. It never became a mass party the way the Third, Second, and First were. Actually, I believe that recently when Chavez was talking about, with his idea of the Fifth International, he kind of touched on this. And while of course I disagree with many things that Chavez says, I think in this he's right. That the Fourth International really, especially after World War II, splintered into a million different sects. With Trotsky now, it's a question of whether Trotskyists are just kind of, well, we're stuck in 1927 or 1933 or something. In reality, in our opinion, Trotskyism is not about having some separate, ideological, oh look, we love Trotsky or something like that. The whole point is that we feel that the whole essence of revolutionary Marxism was essentially sucked out of the world, socialist movement. The workers and peasants, in our opinion, the reason why socialism didn't go the way that it should have, the socialist revolutions failed in so many countries in the world, was precisely because of the middle class leadership that refused to take very specific orientation toward taking power in these countries for various reasons. Ties with, in our opinion, the Kremlin, or with in China, and worrying about foreign policy and trying to make deals with the imperialist countries to try and keep them off of the backs of their countries in exchange for choking revolutions to death. In our view, this is precisely what caused the disintegration of Leninism, Marxism-Leninism, and which only exists, in our opinion, as kind of some kind of an ideological core, buried within manuscripts. Essentially, what we're trying to do, and what we've been trying to do since that time, has been to bring out that revolutionary core to Marxism that we feel was negated by the actual leadership that emerged over the years. Now, as far as the Fourth International splintering, I think it's important to realize that after World War II, everything Trotsky said would happen basically was completely wrong. He thought that fascists would be taking over, there would be no more democracy, there's no way that America and Britain would be able to survive against the fascist machine, that the social democracy and the communist international would completely disintegrate. None of that happened.